process that we have, I guess you know, protocols essentially, but anyway, this is, as I was telling Councilmember Kumar, that this is unique what we do here, because this, in most jurisdictions, oh, hello, Councilman. In most jurisdictions, the mayor and the staff prepare a budget, and then it goes out there, and the council has an opportunity to weigh in and vote on it, and the citizens. But here, in order to spoon feed it to the council and to usually come up with a document before it's presented that everybody agrees on, it really makes the process more engaging with the council, which I think is so important, so that it's not, in a lot, you read about what happens in a lot of cities where, council has so many questions, and then there's all this last minute flurry, and we don't do that here. And I think and I think it really makes for, a better budget after all these years. So with that, I will turn it over to the town manager to read the protocols, and then to the, I guess the committee sort of runs these meetings, right, with the staff.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just a reminder to folks, you probably heard the announcement, the meeting's being recorded. So we will make that available to residents who aren't able to attend today to watch this process take place out in the sunshine. The discussion will be limited this time just to the council, mayor, and budget committee. As noted in the announcements, it's a joint meeting of the budget committee and the town council work session. If you have any questions throughout the process, feel free to send me a message in the chat function. I'll do my best to answer at the meeting, but if not, certainly can get back to you after the fact. And just to quickly go over our budget process, this is the first of two scheduled budget work sessions leading up to the budget's introduction in April, and then subsequent adoption in May. The budget is required to be adopted in May per the town charter. And the mayor presents, along with the upcoming fiscal year budget, a 5-year fiscal plan. If, just as a warning, if for some reason we get interrupted in a way that's disruptive to the discussion and we can no longer continue in a productive way, we'll just end the meeting. We'll send out a new link for folks to rejoin and pick up from there so that we can carry on.
Oh, and before I turn it over, so I do want to particularly thank the outstanding budget committee led by the chair. And I know how much the council, and I appreciate all that work. The other thing I want to say is, remember that this 5-year plan is a unique aspect of our code, which I don't think a lot of other towns like ours in Maryland have. And it's a guideline. It's another great feature that helps the council do a better job in deciding on a budget, because it's just a guideline. It's not something that is needed for debate, it's necessary for debate. It's a guideline to help you do a yearly plan, to vote on a yearly budget. And I think it's been a great tool for our government over the years. And with that, I will turn it back to.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
You're going to say it
as
okay,
Meatloaf
okay.
so eloquently put it. But just for those attending here,
And now everybody's going to get hungry.
right? Yeah.
And at the last meeting, popcorn was distributed. It was very unprofessional. We were all eating in front of our
I
constituents.
see chips
but-
over there.
Yeah, I know. I brought some chips, but anyway. I just wanted to let in.
Just for everybody here, there is a table of contents included for you and the corresponding tab numbers to help you follow along. It's the same way that the electronic version was there. The first unlabeled page for you is the introductory cover letter that the budget committee has put together for you all. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Ann Kelly Walton.
Peter, did you want to say anything process-wise, or do you feel covered?
Yeah, I feel covered, but I can say
Okay.
very quickly that I am also very thankful and the public committee. and Matt. It's a very happy life. They've done a phenomenal. There've been multiple meetings, a lot of work put into this, so very grateful to them for that. I wanted to highlight for the council that there have been some interesting and very helpful process improvements. For instance, last year, Matt had presented, if you remember, a personnel plan, and he's done that again this year. A very critical part of our operating expenses are the personnel and professional services of the town hall. I think we always have proposals from committees, as you know. This year, I think Matt did a great job of sending them a standardized format, giving them a clear timeline, setting priorities. It was really great. And I think that's another great process improvement that I'm very grateful for. And I think the file itself is more accessible. In my humble opinion, maybe there are too many tabs, but it is far more accessible. There are good summaries. And I think it should make it easier for the council to just grapple with the budget. We were discussing that today, historically we go line by line, and we will do that. But we thought that today we could focus on the three biggest pillars, which I think is, sometimes we get right into the weeds and we don't have a big picture and we struggle with it. That was my experience in the past. And so the three biggest pillars are really the revenue projections. Do we understand that? And Anne is going to walk through that. The OpEx, and the biggest part of OpEx is the personnel plan, and Matt is going to walk through that. And then the CapEx, capital expenditures, is a big part of our projections, and Matt is going to walk through that. And once we do that, I think we will cover a large part of the budget. And then we still have time today and the next meeting, and we can go line by line. And then you also have a whole week to go through the materials and surface any issues you want to put through. Does that work for everyone?
Yes,
Excellent.
thanks for the explanation. That was really good.
All right.
I will have someone more say something.
Perfect. All right. Over to you, Anne.
Okay, so I just want to welcome Meredith Wade, who is new to the Budget Committee, and so is getting to learn the ins and outs of the Budget Committee this year. And then, of course, John Medalia, who stayed on the committee, which we really appreciate for his property tax expertise. Just a reminder of what the Budget Committee's mandate is. We are not making decisions about how the town should spend its money. We are simply forecasting tax revenue and property tax revenue, so the biggest components of revenue we forecast. We are also reflecting the assumptions that the town manager recommends and the committee recommends, and ultimately the town council recommends. And we're just basically doing the math for you guys. A big mandate of ours is to keep an eye on reserves. So making sure that the rainy day fund is ideally growing to 12 months reserve, and that there are unencumbered reserves of ideally 2 months of operational expenses. So that's kind of the Budget Committee's mandate. I also think of us as just sort of a, second, third, and fourth set of eyes for the town to kind of look at these numbers with fresh eyes. And you guys are dealing with all these issues on a day-to-day basis, and we kind of pop in, once a year to look at it with fresh eyes and hopefully can provide some perspective on that. With that being said, as Kabir mentioned, the first place that we start is always with the revenue forecast. You may remember that we get about 60% of our tax revenue from income tax, or our revenue from income taxes, and about 30% from property taxes. The property tax is pretty straightforward. New assessments get done every 3 years. That happened, I believe, last year. The next time it'll happen is fiscal year 26. So we have a really good understanding, barring tearing down and new houses getting built and then reassessed. Those tend to even out, but we have a really good understanding for over 3 years' time at a house by house level what the property tax income will be. So that's pretty easy to forecast. The trickier one, particularly because of the COVID and pandemic, has been income tax revenue. So our income tax revenue for the last few years has been to use a technical term, pretty wonky. And that's where ARPA kind of came in and bailed us out of what was looking like a pretty dire income tax situation. This year, interestingly enough, by November of the fiscal year, we know our current fiscal year projection pretty much with some certainty. So typically by November, we have most of the income tax revenue. We have a model that projects it out and we know what the year end is going to be. This year's been a little bit different because November looked great, came in higher than what we expected, but then we got an extra surprise that January came in much higher than what we expected. And basically what we found is that the tax year 21, because remember the taxes are on a calendar year, we're on a fiscal year, tax year reconciliations for tax year 21 were just much, much higher than they've ever been in the last few years. So the good news is, from an income tax standpoint, we are about $576,000 ahead of what we projected to be for fiscal year 23.
That's right.
So that's a good number.
And scroll to the left, so.
Yeah.
That's that 19 number, right?
Yes. Intergovernmental, yeah. So
That's right.
the challenge with that, however, is that it makes our forecasting for fiscal year 24 trickier because we essentially have a year that looks great, but we can't tell, is this a new trend? Is this the new normal? Or is this sort of a one-time catch up of all of the things that were happening, due to COVID? And we have data points that would lead me in either direction, frankly. So on the positive side, when we look at household income data, we for sure have a much higher and growing tax base. So I put in some of the numbers here for you guys under that first bullet point. But basically, household income has grown from an average of $355,000 per household in calendar year 2019 to $555,000 per household in calendar year 21. Obviously, we don't have 22 data yet because the state is still working on returns, but they will get us that information. And when we have that information, I think we'll have a better understanding of how this trend is playing out. The other thing is that we're seeing much higher income brackets. So for the first time, we actually added a new income bracket that went up to above $5 million per year. So we got some additional high income.
Was that you, Debbie?
That was house.
Congratulations, Deb.
Anyway, so who knows, did these people have a great windfall year? Is this a new normal? Did people move in that were secret high net worth individuals we don't know about? So anyway, all to say that we looked at this a lot of different ways and ultimately came down on the side of being conservative with the income tax projection and basically going back to, we looked at a few things. We looked at what we had budgeted for fiscal year 23 and growing from there. We looked at what was the 5-year average. Ultimately, what we decided to do was to look at our detailed income tax model, grow it by 5.1%, which is what we're assuming is our 1-year inflation rate, and use that as our income tax projection for fiscal year 24. So that was like a lot of kind of meat and potatoes on that, but I think it's a really important one because obviously it has huge implications for what money will be available to fund some of the operational and capital decisions that you guys have to weigh.
And a quick clarifying.
I'd like to
question.
say a few words too.
And then Robert. But you're also saying that we will have more data coming in coming months that will allow us to revisit.
Yeah, I don't know when the state will be able to provide us with the calendar year 22 household data, which is going to be critical. We won't know what our fiscal year 24 budget numbers really look like until the following November. But keep in mind, we got another big, huge chunk in January for the first time ever. So, I mean, I can't tell you what January 2024 is going to look like, right?
But you expect to revisit that?
Yes, absolutely.
So let me just inject something here. So you might want to touch base with the controller's office. There's a new controller, as everybody knows, because they might be able to help you with some of the forecasting. We've met over the years. We've met with them from time to time. I don't think we've met with them for a long time.
No, we did reach out with some questions about the income tax data that we're seeing, because we're like, this is very
Yeah.
surprising.
So did
And-
you get an answer?
Yeah, and basically, there's a couple things going on. You all may be aware, the state of Maryland changed the tax law a couple of years ago to create these, to allow for these pass-through entities, which typically higher net worth individuals take advantage of. That leads to a slower processing of these higher income tax returns, which might explain why we're seeing some of this later receipt of reconciled tax revenue. The other thing is that just even if you're a high net worth individual and you're not using a pass-through entity, you're still more likely to ask for a delay of your tax return and an extension, and then, so then you're gonna, it's all gonna get collected later. So their feeling was, you know, your revenue base is changing, you've got higher net worth households, and we've got these dynamics going on with the pass-through entities that we think are gonna be an ongoing trend. But beyond that, there was not further insight. But I agree with you that we do want to reach out to, there was one gentleman in particular who was very helpful at looking at this. And so we will reach out to him to see if he has any further insight.
Right, a couple of things. First of all, I was upset that budget work sessions that were held were not held under the Open Meetings Act provisions, so that they were in fact closed meetings. Ofcomet advertised that they were happening, didn't advertise when they were happening, and running Zoom link to the public. So these remarks that I'm making are remarks that I would have been made if I'd attended budget work sessions, but I didn't know when they were. It was difficult for me to attend them. So I apologize that they are quite detailed and specific. But I'm focusing here on your idea about the revenue projections, and I'm going to add a little to what you said. Actually, what changed was the 2018 federal tax law. And what that did was, for the first time, allow pass-through organizations to be treated as income tax units themselves. Pass-through organizations are like law partnerships or doctor partnerships, accounting partnerships, where they're all sharing in the ownership, but the dollars in it pass through to them in income. That's where it comes. The term pass-through comes from. When Maryland got that, they said, okay, this means that we're now going to have to handle tax returns differently. And so what we have to do, first of all, is gather the income for these new units, which are the pass-through. For example, the law firms, doctor's office firm, the accountancy practice, all those things. And that took them some considerable time. And only when they had done that did they go on to produce tax returns of partners, the individuals in the firm. Well, that was all explained to us by Rich Madalena, who works for County Executive. And he said what that meant was that tax returns from partners were processed very late. And that's likely to be from both 2019 and 2020. He said, we're going to get a big increase in January from these tax returns. You warned us also that this is a one-off increase for this year. You will not see the same big value in June that you see in January, because this is the catch-up. This is January catching up from the prior years. In terms of revenue forecasting, what that means is we should go back and adjust for prior years for purposes of forecasting, because this is prior year income that we're talking about. So it's coming from 2019 and 2020 income. So that means 21 and 22 tax season. We should adjust our revenue for these years by basically taking the extra that we got in January, halving it and distributing between 21, 22, and that more or less corrects what the real revenue is for these years at that point. Once we've got that, then we can do a revenue forecast beyond that based on those higher numbers. You will see what is extraordinary at the moment, which is a very low number, very high number, and then a very low number. You see much we're staying. And it is a more realistic portrayal of what we've done. For the June distribution, I recommend that you use the June 22 distribution adjusted, which is and plus inflation, and that's true. Is that all clear?
Well, it's just not consistent with what the state guidance has said, which is they think that the January number will persist in being high because of the extra time that it takes to process these high net worth tax returns. So I understand your point. It's just not consistent with what we've heard this year. from
Well,
the state.
it said if the state said directly that expects the June number to be as high as the January number.
No, not the June number. The June number is not high and we haven't adjusted it accordingly.
Good, all right.
No, the June number was unaffected by all this. It was just November that was abnormally
All right.
high
So,
and January, which was
okay,
super abnormally high.
so, all right. The June number then we're fine, it's not high. What I'm saying is for your revenue forecasting, which is your main function here. But don't base the revenue on the forecasting on the numbers I've seen here in 21, 22, because those numbers are low. They're low because the partner's income didn't come to us in 21, 22. It's only come in a gallop in 23. So what we need to do for a revenue forecast is adjust 21 and 22 by basically dividing the extra from 23 into 21 and 22, and then build out the forecasting from that. And if you're going to do that, I want it to be done in an open meeting of the budget committee. I do want to be there, but I think others should be there too. So we can all get this together and all agree on it, because at the moment, this is an extraordinary number that you have here. Makes little sense.
Which number?
The 1902 and 23, it implies that we had a massive.
What fiscal year is that?
Well,
We are talking about fiscal year
normally
24.
state income tax revenue comes across the last 4 years. So you get something off the last 4 years, and that's because people delay their taxes, stuff like that. This year, we had a much higher percentage delayed because of the change in the federal tax, which is why we got this big flip flop in January 2023.
Yeah,
They're
and
not
that-
forecasting it to be.
Yeah, the
like that for the
reconciliation
rest of the
numbers,
time.
the reconciliation numbers have,
What's
Don't affect the
what's
model.
wrong- What's wrong in your forecast?
They just
is-
don't.
What's wrong in your forecast is you're using numbers from 21 and 22 to build out the 5-year forecast, which are artificially low because the partner's income is not included in it. That's what's wrong.
Right, so this is a more conservative approach. That's the.
Yeah.
Well, it's wrong.
It's not.
There's no right or wrong. We can't
I
predict the
can't-
future.
I can't
They're two
predict.
variables.
Yeah.
When the
I'll try-
state,
I'll try this.
Robin, the state is telling me that this is gonna persist. I can
But
send you all the
I
documentation.
agree. What's going to persist is our higher income. That's going to persist. What's not going to persist is the big burst of funds in January. We're not going to see that next year.
that's why we
Robin,
didn't
That's
assume
what we
it.
said.
That's why we didn't assume it.
Unfortunately, we are not, we
Yeah.
are saying, for the purposes of a budget process for our town, we cannot assume things. We have to follow a process.
This is.
We don't know. You don't know, I don't know, none of us know. We don't know.
We've been told by the state, we've been told by the county that a number of our households had late processing of their tax returns because they have household income from partnerships.
Let me put it another way.
Okay.
Robert. Let me put it another way. This is a conservative projection.
It's
Hold on. If the projection turns out to be different, the reality turns out to be different, that's absolutely fine for us.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, from a budgeting perspective, we are going
I'll try,
smartly and
I'll
conservatively.
try one more time. Do you base your projections on numbers that are wrong?
They are not wrong. That is an extreme characterization. Actually, that is an incorrect
All right.
characterization.
So
They're absolutely in no way
Let me try
wrong.
again. Where did this money come from in January?
The calendar year, tax year 21 reconciled tax returns.
Right, and probably some from 20 actually. But. And
No.
so Is that going to happen again?
But, okay, but no.
Well,
Well, the state says it will happen again, but how much, I don't know. You could be completely right, which is that it could be a very small amount, or it could be a persistent problem that high net worth individuals that utilize pass-through entities are going to be
No.
persistently delayed in getting their tax returns
No.
processed.
no. What happened this time was the state delayed things. Okay, and the state delayed things because they had to build something new, which is they had to build tax entities for these pass-through organizations, for the actual practices themselves. That's done now. They've done it. They don't need to do that again in future years. They're going to be faster processing tax returns in future years. So there'll be a better distribution.
Okay,
Awesome.
well, Councilor Barr, in order to proceed here today, what we usually do is when we come up with a figure, if a majority is fine with the figure, that's what we move forward on. And then later on, if new information is obtained, then perhaps it could be changed, but it's not the purpose of to debate. Everybody has respect for your view and all that, but we can't spend time debating each item now. We can move forward if we all. if we
All right,
have to.
I'll stop there.
But it's good that you brought that to the table, but we can't spend all time on that one item, one number. But continue to feed the information and lobby everybody. It's
Well, I'm also happy to share with you the latest model, Robin, and go through with you send you the communications from the state with the guidance that they provided. And
I'd be happy to review them, but as I said, what should have happened was the meeting should have been open. and that should have been
The
open.
meetings
I-
are open.
I-
We don't try. Matt sent the announcements like all of.
I didn't have a secret meeting. I
Yeah,
will tell you that right now.
And that's also.
I'm a volunteer,
Well,
just
it's-
for the
it's-
record.
It's irrelevant, it's irrelevant to the discussion now because you're having the opportunity now to bring up your views.
But I have to say, Robin, the tone and the posture is not appreciated. You started with accusing us of having a hidden meeting. Then you said our numbers were wrong. Then you said the state is foolish.
I did
You
not
just
say
don't,
the state is
effectively, you're like, the state doesn't know, the state is, this is not helpful. It is absolutely no way helpful. This is an extremely serious process with a lot of effort that has gone into it. Extremely serious.
Yeah, very true.
So to start with an unprofessional tone, mischaracterizing this is not productive. Productive is our emphasis here. Productive. That is not productive. It is absolutely not. And as you know, Matt sends out the meeting announcements. You've been in this town doing this work for a long time. No one is secretly doing anything. Matt sends it out. Okay, if you saw the meeting announcement, you didn't know what time it was, you could have written to him. Hey, Matt, I don't see the meeting time. Can you tell me what it is? How many times do you write to Matt in a day, by the way? I'm just saying it is absolutely unprofessional how you have done this. And I didn't want to do this, but last year we had a similar set of circumstances. We cannot derail this process. It is extremely critical. We don't do that. It is important, as Jeffrey said, one of the most important things we do.
All right.
All right, I'm going to move on.
I think I would like Anne to move on, to be honest with
So
you.
let's-
I would like Anne to move on to the next two bullets. Please, Anne.
I'm not even sure where we are anymore. Okay, so we've talked through the revenue projection. Ultimately, the council will make a decision on that. The committee's gonna make our recommendation and the council will make a decision. So the other thing that just to flag is that given this more conservative view of revenue, we do have to look at our capital spending plans. We've delayed a lot of capital projects for a number of years due to the pandemic and then due to the need to create master plans for proper budgeting purposes. So I think that as all of those things get stacked up and start to come into play in fiscal year 24, obviously we're going to have significant capital spending needs for the coming years, and that will put pressure on the reserve levels. In addition, as Veer noted, the committees for the first time were formally asked to submit their budget requests well ahead of this first working session on purpose so that we could actually integrate them into a first draft based on what the town manager recommended. Last year, we were kind of getting committee requests throughout the process, and I think doing it earlier in the years is probably a good process step going forward, so that the council has the universe of spending requests to consider as you look at the numbers.
One quick thing I noticed you looking to find, that's tab 10.
Tab 10, okay.
I'm sorry,
You
yeah.
can call those out because I'm having trouble following.
Yeah, sorry.
Anne doesn't know where they are. in the
Okay,
binder,
oh
right?
yeah,
So
I'm sorry,
it's-
I'm just going through my talking points, my
That's
budget.
great.
Sorry, I'll let you know where I'm pointing
Yeah,
things
I
out.
appreciate that.
You see the
I
numbers.
see them there, but
The numbers here correspond to, as Matt said, that's number 10,
okay.
to the tabs on your binder.
Gotcha.
For that
It's a little
particular
small.
tab, just ignore the fiscal year 23 number, because that's, you really should be looking at fiscal year 24 through
Yeah.
28, so ignore that, because I'm not even sure if that's the budget number or the projected number. So, I don't know that one.
Thank you.
Okay, so the other thing to consider, so really the biggest area to think about is capital expenditures, because when you look at the OpEx side, we just have fewer degrees of freedom of opportunities to save things. Most of the operational expenditure budget is in personnel, be that employees or contracted services, professional services that are tied to specific town functions. So if you start to look at that, there's just not a lot there to cut that would materially save money, and go straight to the bottom line. So the other point that we wanted to make is that, the capital budgeting plan, a lot of those things, as we mentioned, have been deferred. And our recommendation is, now that some of these significant capital expenditures that have been deferred have master plans, is to really prioritize capital expenditures that have been deferred and that have master plans for budgeting purposes. I think that there is an opportunity to continue to put away money in a special capital fund, which was always the intent, for future ideas that are not yet, translated into a master plan. I think it's really hard certainly from the budget committee's perspective, to put numbers in and put it in front of the council if they're sort of made up numbers. That is not a comfortable position to be in for the budget committee. So that would be a recommendation. So the trade-offs that the town will need to make to keep unencumbered reserves where they need to be, and I will say the budget that you have in front of you has unencumbered reserves at,
Can we go to the summary?
I can go to the,
Yeah.
this is just
It
tab number,
has- yeah,
tab
and-
number 1.
Is this? it
and
looks
I
like
will
this.
say, the next time we do this one, let's put the months of reserves as the bottom line there.
Good idea.
Yeah, but basically for the rainy day fund, we made an assumption that we would not, within the 5 years, target achieving 12 months, which is the rainy day fund's ultimate goal, but instead pegged increasing it to 10.5 months by year 5. And then the unencumbered reserves stays at around 2 months of operating expenses. So this budget reflects that. So it reflects the town manager's recommendations of capital expenditures, as well as the committee, where the town manager and the committee, I think, align. Although, as far as I can tell, there was very little difference between, Matt, what you were recommending in terms of capital expenditures and what the committees were requesting. I think everything
It's very-
essentially got in here for this. So for a first pass, the fact that we have positive unencumbered reserves and we're still able to grow the rainy day fund, that's good. Some might argue that the more responsible and conservative approach is to try to get to that 12 months within 5 years. And so that's kind of a policy decision that I think the council needs to make. The only other assumptions I wanted to highlight for the council is just the inflation rates. We peg to the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-year T-bill rates to forecast inflation. This budget continues what was approved in last month's budget, which was increasing the property tax rate to 12 cents per $100 starting in fiscal year 25. So that doesn't include that property tax increase. And I think those were all of the big picture assumptions that are reflected in this budget.
Thank you very much. Yeah, curious about the the property tax, when do we actually have to make the decision on that? When do we have to, I guess, notify the state or?
Every year we submit that annual property tax to the state. If, right now, we're keeping it flat, so I would just send it to them that we're keeping it flat if this is what we did.
Next budget cycle, we will have to decide.
So we have until next budget cycle. It's not like this will,
No, this for
Trip
next
in
coming
next month
fiscal
or
year, it's the
something.
same.
The only thing we adopt officially is this 1-year budget. We've always approved the mayor's 5-year fiscal plan as part of that, but it's non-binding.
It's not, we don't adopt it. It's just a projection looking forward, and as Jeffrey explained, it's more of a fiscal outlook. And so just to be sure, we are looking at this highlighted column, that's our
Right.
focus, is the fiscal year.
But I do think it is something that, because it is looming out there, you will probably want to communicate it much earlier.
And the only other thing I would add is that every year the state sends us what they call the constant tax yield, which is basically if you want to keep your property tax revenue exactly even to the dollar, this is what we recommend. This is what our algorithm pumps out that you should keep it at. So if we want to raise it above that number, we have to send out a special notice to our residents, and that would almost certainly be the case.
Again, not for the coming fiscal year.
Right, yes.
But also, this is why, this is another reason why I have this clarification about how the budget committee is projected. Because next year we will be revisiting that
Yeah.
projection, and it may play a part in whether we increase.
I mean, truthfully, if we're structurally super conservative, you may be able to defer that property tax increase. Alternatively, as the council weighs the different capital expenditure requests and starts to think about long-term other master plans that need to be happening, you might say, well, we need to keep that in because we should be building up capital reserves.
And I think it will be a part of our conversation.
that's good, thank you.
But right now, I mean, the main thing for this upcoming new fiscal year 24 is really gonna be the pool. And hopefully that's like a 1-year, big expense that, won't come in the future years that. Right, is that 900, is that like a real number or?
Yeah. It's a very real number. I
One
mean,
of the
well, Matt can
realist
explain.
numbers.
Yeah,
Right.
As I understand it, that's year 1, year 2, year 3. So, I mean, it could be just a little bit, not saying we should adjust it. but
Before we go there, just to clarify, so when you look at this, and you look at the sheet, and you look at column G, what Anne was talking about, the revenue line, that is driving the revenue line projections. We want to make sure that's very clear between all of us, because that's the most important pillar
yeah.
for us. to understand.
That's why I got so unprofessional earlier. Because
That's not why you, but let me finish. The second is the operating expense. I think it'd be worthwhile for Matt to walk through the personal expenses he's projecting, because that is the biggest driver of the operating. It's the biggest driver. And then thirdly, it's the capital expense, and Shannon is right, the biggest driver of that are certain big CapEx items, including the pool, and it'd be good for Matt to walk through all of them. This is important that we do that today. We look at both the big drivers of OpEx, big drivers of CapEx, so we understand. We don't have to resolve everything today, but we must understand what they are, so we can.
Can I just say one other thing about those total revenue numbers? Because I feel like this picture gets a little bit misleading because you have to remember the ARPA funds are included in fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. So
We took it as a revenue, if you remember last year.
yeah, so if you just look at the history of where we were on the budget committee pre-ARPA, we were very concerned about our income tax revenue going lower pre-COVID. So we were very concerned that there was a structural problem with our revenue for a lot of different reasons that we couldn't fully explain or understand. That is also motivating the budget committee to be more conservative on projecting income tax going forward.
Because you're saying that might be the secular trend, we don't know, because we're still living in the post-pandemic.
Yeah, and I just, it looks like 35%, drop, but, take out the ARPA and you go back to the trend line we were, and it's actually an increase. So it's just it's a misleading picture when you look at it just like that.
You got a, but you're saying a very conservative revenue forecast, using, with that very revenue, the revenue forecast, we should defer some of our capital expenses to later years. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that right now. Matt put in every capital expense request that he is recommending and that the committees submitted is my understanding.
No, just to clarify, Anne is saying that's one of our levers. Budget committee is not recommending any policy. She's
No,
saying
no, no.
you can bring your OpEx down, you can bring the CapEx down, you can change the RDF rainy day fund lever. It's up to us to
So
decide.
this is just the picture of what all the
We
information
share,
we
yeah.
got.
Because you
Yes.
And then we'll
decide-
go line by line and go out, in, out.
We
in.
can do that. I recommend we start with the chunkiest items.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that would be practically, good use of our time.
But let me just say this, so if you, as a council said, no, it's way too conservative to just grow rainy day fund to 10 and a half months over 5 years, it should reflect 12 months by 5 years. That would mean you have to start going to your capital expenditures, is my point. So as you start to make some of those trade-offs, so right now, the revenue picture and it all kind of works out. But as you guys get into the details and you look at all of the different plans, and those are just the plans that committees might have submitted or that the town manager has surfaced, but there might be other things that you guys have discussed that are not reflected in here, then those, you just have to think of those different levers that you can pull.
And I would say what the proposal from Matt and the budget committee is, it's a favorable view right now. We have handsome rainy day fund going up. It's not 12 months, but it's going up. It's looking good. We are contributing to it. At least we're doing that. We are ending each year with very close to Matt's targeted unencumbered reserves. That means he has a run rate of a few months to run the house, which is very positive. That's the last slide, right? We are indeed leaning into the major capital expenses, as Anne highlighted, that the long overdue next year. We are leaning into it. So it is largely working right now in terms of where we want to be. But as Anne said, we're not sure about the revenue growth. There is a looming property tax increase. It always pays right there to be fiscally prudent. So we may end up finding ways to cut and be a little bit tighter, always pays off in the long run. And that's part of our job.
Let me ask one question to see where you think, why you thought this way. The pool bridge, you're saying it should be replaced in fiscal year 25 now. I believe in last year's budget it was replaced in fiscal year 24. Its condition is deteriorating, a bit like the pool in that regard. It's how long it's going to last before it becomes critical. So what was the thinking in choosing fiscal year 25?
Matt, would it be useful to first run through the personnel?
No, actually,
And then get into the CapEx, or you want to start with the
I
CapEx?
like the question.
But I don't want us to jump around because we have, all of us have to grapple with these
This
numbers.
is an example. I just want to see your view. That's what it was. What was it?
Robin, we are a group. We all have to grapple with these numbers. I'm just saying, we're structuring it so that we all can understand them.
I know, but this is what he wants to know. Let's answer.
Let's
the
answer
question.
that, all right.
Well, thank you.
And I guess the way I interpret that question is, did the committee request fiscal year 24 and for some reason,
There's no committee for it.
okay, so how did you come up with 25? That's the question.
Do you want to put up that tab or just walk?
Sure, yeah, so that would be, well, that's, so,
Don't you have the pool breakdown?
It's not in that budget.
It's not.
I formally say that it should be called the pool bridge and Marnie Shore Path Bridge, or pool and Marnie Shore Path.
okay. So by and large, what I what I used is the mayor's previous 5-year plan to steer what the long-term.
Which one is that?
I'm sorry,
I
this
can't
is the big one here. So
Okay.
this is
This is
tab,
the
big one,
detailed
okay.
by line, but-
yeah, right.
Okay, sorry.
And you want to guide them which page that is on in their hard copy.
Yes,
Can you tell us
so,
just the line number?
let's see, that'll,
328.
328.
Correct?
Which was
No,
328.
328 line item.
Yeah,
Oh.
Shannon's,
328.
yes.
Which is page 15.
That's page 15, you said?
That's cool, but I don't see the page.
Parking lot.
There somewhere, because I found it.
yeah, sorry, it's actually line 312.
Previous,
Sorry.
14.
yeah. Oh, no,
Actually goes back to
page
No,
13. 13.
I don't know why.
But isn't the info you want to be looking at, isn't there an analysis from somebody about the lifespan of that bridge? And I think the main reason why there was and some kind of urgency is because it was so, it seemed to be annoying to have the staff put ice melt or whatever on there. It wasn't that the bridge is gonna collapse right away, but didn't we get an engineering report about that?
I thought we did repairs on the bridge. a
We,
couple years
And so
ago.
I think that at the time, that council was just so concerned about ice and that the staff had to go out whenever it snowed. Of course, now with climate change, it never snows. But I don't think that there was, that any kind of engineering report said that it was gonna collapse right away. So that's the kind of stuff you want to look at to see if it's reasonable to delay it for 1 year.
yeah, so to answer your question specifically, Robin, this goes back to what Ann was saying in terms of budgeting with or without a plan to it. So I didn't feel comfortable at this point putting it in FY '24 because there's been no movement in terms of its deterioration really, and we don't have a strong estimate for it for FY '24. And so given that there's all these other projects that are imminent, it's partially a capacity issue in terms of what we can handle in the office and putting off for 1 year. What we know is coming up the pipe, and that number is based off of essentially doubling what it cost before.
Would it be useful to go through the big ticket CapEx since you're at the pool already now? Or
Sure.
how do you want to, okay.
So that would be tab 10 is the capital expenditure. Major capital expenditures. They're broken up by category here. So,
Wait, can I just ask a quick question?
yeah, of course.
So though, like for our fiscal year 23, which is what we're in right now. I mean, I don't think that we've spent like nearly any of that money.
That's the point Anne was making.
You gotta
These
cross
are-
out for this
These are
page.
budgeted line. This is not the actuals for 23 on this page.
Okay,
These are, yeah, these
not
are,
the actuals.
these are
for 23.
projections.
But we can tell you the actuals. for 23.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're gonna save money from that, from this year.
Yes,
Okay,
right? But these are not the actuals, first of all, and then I think your additional point is, you're saying, I don't believe you actually spent that this year,
yeah,
but only math has that.
Is there any, these are projections, so this is what I'm projecting we will spend by the end of this fiscal year. It's not what we spent
so
as
like the
of
lighting,
March.
you think we'll be able to get in $80,000 worth of the lighting?
That's based off of the conversations with Pepco to do it in 3 tranches. I haven't updated since our meeting and they said they might do 1 invoice, but I was still going off of doing it in 3 tranches. So that's one of That's 1/3 of the total for
Okay,
it.
that's helpful.
Have they given you an estimate of 240,000?
That didn't include lighting shields. So the two
Didn't they
212.
say they're going to put lighting shields in the issues?
No, they said that they recommended us telling them where we should put in shields because they could add them later as well, but that it would be easier to submit it all as part of the.
I thought they said, at a meeting, I mean, we're all there at the meeting last week, when we asked about shields, that essence we would get the lights in first, and then see who needed the shields, and then put the shields in.
What are shields?
They don't flare into
If
your house.
if it, yeah, if
And you
it,
put a shield and light the lights.
Well, this is an example of information that, one thing we like to do at these sessions is identify information we need. So thanks for bringing that up, because we need that.
yeah, I'll clarify from them. Number one, whether we would split it up into 3 tranches payment wise, as we talked about before, because they did sort of suggest that they recommended submitting it all in one invoice.
And they also kind of suggested that there could be a huge wait for the lights, like they were
Right.
saying over a year.
Yes.
I mean, so that's.
That was
I-
the takeaway for sure.
I don't anticipate that being the case, but yes, it's worth the information.
Didn't we say was get all the order in at once, so they can order all the lights at once, so as to avoid further delays.
That's right.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
And Shannon, the implication of your question is that we will end up spending more in 20 and less in 24 on lighting, correct?
It
Well,
sounds like the
doesn't-
opposite.
Isn't it end of June? I mean, it's like TikTok, Pepco takes forever, so I think that we're not gonna spend that much in 23, we're gonna spend more in
But
24.
you
We-
probably have to give money when you sign it.
We budgeted it in 23. So if it comes to it, as the mayor said, and they give us an invoice, whether it's, no matter how they structure it, we have the money in our budget to pay for it. So we could spend it this year. Ultimately, over a 5-year period, the sum is gonna be,
Well, but
Right.
that's a great, helpful question, and we should probably.
yeah,
investigate.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
We pay for these things or give them pay up front for something that might take a year to get to it.
I don't know, often we structure it that we pay a third at contract signing, a third when they start, and then a third at
We
completion,
definitely should
something
have
like
asked them that, and we need that information before we do the budget this year.
that. I'll be sure that I tighten those numbers in the
But the
budget.
lighting line is really this capital project.
That's almost all of it, and then there's the FY 25 number, which is small in comparison, but yeah.
The
Exactly.
committee requests.
Which is based on a committee request to do further studies, and one of the options was lower lighting or foot lighting, something like that.
That's on the public side.
Correct.
And so you accepted that proposal.
Yeah, exactly. That's what that
Well,
15,000.
they wanted it this year.
They-
They wanted it for fiscal year 24.
They requested, so, yeah,
and
I don't know
you-
how the
and you
best
thought
way
it
to do
made-
it is, I can go.
No, just explain it. Yeah.
In essence, that was one of the committee requests, is the Public Safety Committee requesting $15,000 for foot lighting. I accepted that request, put it into FY 25 because as we were talking about with the lighting project, I just wasn't sure if it would be completed in time, and felt like it would make sense to get that first project done before we do a study and evaluation of what further needs are. So then the anticipation is the next step of our general improvement of lighting in town would be in FY 25. We do that study
Mhm.
and add it in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll avoid it at all.
We're working on it.
So this is all of the deck and the piping and stuff, but it's not the pool itself, right? The pool.
So if you
Item
move,
11.
if you move on to the next
Item 11.
the next page, item 11, goes through basically everything we need to do. So
This is a proposal.
this is based off of American Pool's proposal for us. And I worked to put it in, as Robin said, into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the concrete work that we've already talked about and already approved, the decking work, and then the new wiring that would be needed alongside that. So that's, like you said, Steve, that's just the deck. Tier 2 is moving on to the pool itself. One of the things we were told is the piping underneath the pool might need to be replaced. It makes sense to do that at the same time, because why would we put in new concrete 5 years from now, take out the new concrete, replace and spend that, $312,000 in tier 1.
The piping are as old.
The piping is just as old as
The last
the rest of
And
the
this is an old
infrastructure.
pool.
They actually, if you've noticed, the pool was drained this week, so the cover's off the pool over there. There's already leaks in the
I
pools.
saw that.
So they're doing some testing to see where in the skimmer line there's leaks. So it's, even though it's tier 2, don't let that,
It's tier 2.
don't make, don't,
It's actually
Because of
tier
those-
1.
it's,
As of this week.
it's equally as important as tier 1. It's
Yeah.
just,
With the leak, with the leaking they're talking about, could that change our price?
That's a good question,
no,
because now it's.
Well, it sounds
yeah.
like they're gonna replace the plumbing, so why would it?
yeah,
I mean,
it,
has to
it,
replace
this is,
Well, as in we fix the leak and then fix it again and then fix it again before this work starts.
yeah, I think the idea is we're draining the pool so we can open it up this year, and we'll do some patching to fix whatever leaks there are, but it's like patching a hole in your tire, it's only a matter of time. before you-
So I have a question.
No, I'm just like, this sounds
I have a
terrifying.
great question.
Yeah.
Now, every year, we always bring up, as Councilmember Heller mentioned about, what is the lifespan of the pool itself, right?
Yes,
And we have nothing there's nothing in there for that. And I thought that we had discussed some earlier meeting is that given what happened in Florida with that condo a couple years ago, that we all discovered that there's new technology for analyzing those kind of things. And were we going to try to find out which companies do that kind of analysis and how much that costs to put that in this year's budget? I'm just throwing that out because I thought that's something that we had talked about.
we did do testing on the pool, and they confirmed
Oh, you
essentially
mean on the pool itself,
on the pool itself.
using the latest technology, using new technology?
I don't know that they used.
I mean, was it done by American Pools?
No, that was the other company that we
Okay.
hired to.
Yeah, we actually, based on your recommendation, we did do an assessment, if I remember correctly. It was recent.
Yes, we did do an assess, I
You
don't,
said, let's assess this year before.
And did it say in that assessment when
Yeah.
we should put the replacement of the pool into our plan?
yeah, I mean, it confirmed this, that we should do it as soon as possible.
we're
that
not
To
it's-
replace the
replacing the
pool. I'm talking about the
But
pool.
He's talking about the pool.
Oh, the
I'm not-
pool,
I'm
oh,
not-
I'm sorry,
I'm
I
not-
misunderstood
I'm not
your
talking about
question.
all this other stuff. I'm talking about,
That's overall.
which is what,
If we have to
isn't that what
replace
you,
the pool, that
isn't that
would
what
be
you
millions of
brought up?
dollars.
Isn't that what you brought up?
Or at
I
least
did
another
bring that up.
million.
Yeah.
No,
If we were to dig up the,
Right.
if we were to dig
Yeah.
up the pool, that would be a multi-million-dollar
Right, and
project.
that's something that we might, but
What they found in the assessment, though, was that the underlying concrete that makes up the pool basin is structurally sound, but that's why it's so important to do the caulking and the perimeter pads, the replastering,
So water doesn't seep through
The-
and weaken that.
Right.
the mechanical, so if you see the second 2 lines there, mechanical surface strip and white coat finish,
Yeah.
That's to make sure that we don't have
So it's
to.
possible that if we keep maintaining it properly all these years, that pool might last hundreds of years.
Well, it should,
It might,
Well, let's say it takes us.
it
it might
should,
last 100 years,
Yeah.
it might last 100 years.
it should last another couple of decades.
I wouldn't make the 100-year projection, but
Okay,
Yeah,
well, but I
20,
mean,
30
100,
years.
remember, 100 would be starting from 50 years ago. So-
Right, yes.
Yeah, we are pretty much.
So,
halfway.
so maybe it's gonna last another 30 years.
That's,
Good.
yeah, that was sort of what that was what in general was suggested, is that if we do this work, this will last us as long as we've lasted then, we'll have a, good as new pool. 50 years from now, 40 years from now, and we might need to think about the pool. but- Right. Well, that goes to the capital, capital saving.
Not the,
Are you in support of that?
so I see the tiers of the repairs,
Mhm.
and my sense is they're all in agreement that we need to do all of this stuff. The timing of it. Because we want to minimize impact on the pool season.
Yeah.
We're budgeting this for the next fiscal year. Are we gonna be able to do this before the pool opens? Do we delay opening? Do we shut the pool down
Well,
early?
next
What do we do?
no, we're gonna do
I-
some now, and then when the pool, as soon as, that's why the pool is closing
Okay.
after
The
Labor
pool's
Day.
gonna close a week early this year, in
Yeah.
fact, to get started on the work. So in
Okay.
September, they'll do as much as they can. And
Well, once everyone is aligned when the pool should.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Do this more often.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, yes, you go.
Close it.
I think the
Okay. Thank you.
the one where we might have more discussions is when you go down to tier 3. Some of them are probably necessary, just because the equipment is at the end of life. For example, the lifeguard stands, they'll detach them, they'll try to save them, but we should budget in case we need to replace them, because you can't have a pool
By law,
exactly.
we cannot have. life.
Yeah, you can't.
So
Yeah.
if we're able to save,
The
save
pool
them,
is safe, you can't use the pool.
Right.
They
No,
just
but-
wanna have a good view.
point being, we may save that money, but we shouldn't budget to save that money, because we should assume, we-
Are the new lifeguard stands any more durable than the current ones?
well, they'll be newer, so that they'll have less wear and tear on them. The ones that are there now have been there since the original, so they're actually quite good.
All right, so they are, all right, 50 years old.
Yeah, right. And same with the ladders. I think the main one on there that I tacked on is a permanent shade structure. That's something that always comes up. Do we take down the cover there and we put it up here for 4th of July, then we take it down and move it? It takes away from the lifespan of the tent.
And
We just replaced the tent. So that's just something to think about. It's kind of a drop in the bucket
But if
compared
we
to
could
the,
take down the semi-permanent one, and we would use it for town events, it was like we're throwing it out.
then we would use this one for at the town hall,
Right,
and if we had other things, but it would just be less taking it out, throw it in the truck, turn it over here.
I
and
think a
vice
permanent
versa.
thing is in order.
Yeah,
Well, that's something you might want to put in the budget.
Well, it's there,
well, it's there.
it's there,
It's
well,
Right, but
Yeah.
you can take it out.
no, no, I'm advocating for the pool, no.
So I'm meeting with a company to get a second bid on this on Wednesday. So we can move forward as soon as possible on approving
Great.
a contract on it.
Thank you. Great work.
So, yeah, so that's the biggest capital expenditure that we're looking at next year. Then kind of moving down the list, the next biggest would be the streets, sidewalk, and stormwater. There's not necessarily a specific budget on this item. I made one specific to pool because it was was so big. So going back, this is going back to tab 10, I'm sorry, just looking at high level categories. 300,000 of that, let me just double check my numbers. And if you want to reference it,
Is everyone tracking that? Is everyone on the right tab?
we're,
10.
we're on
here.
tab 10, and that's all based off of the tabs 12, 13 of my proposals.
Should we
So
go to?
I could go to
Where do you want us to go?
I could go tab 12
Well,
maybe.
I think
Yeah.
12.
So this is a combined,
Which is the other big sheet.
Okay.
yeah. So this way we can just kind of go down the
And it's
big,
the 3 items below, correct? On that big sheet.
Resurfacing streetlights.
Resurfacing streetlights, stormwater.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the second biggest is street resurfacing. So as you all remember, just last week, we approved the contract for the roadway and sidewalk evaluation. So the idea is that they're going to give us a plan based on the evaluation of the streets that sets us up for multi-year improvements of our public infrastructure. Now, the numbers that I have here are based off of, I guess it was four or 5 years ago. Doug's predecessor, Larry Plummer, did an evaluation walking through the streets. And for just as a little bit of background, Larry was a retired state highway guy. So roads were his kind of bread and butter. And as his kind of parting gift, he did a plan for us on what he recommended multi-year to
Bottom line is the last concrete set of numbers you have.
bottom line is this will be updated based on the Dewberry plan.
It's a good plan.
Yes,
When it's gonna get
they had said, yeah, it would take a few weeks last week, I guess it
We
was.
want to have it in time for a final budget.
You're expecting it to have it in.
I think we will. We just got the contract signed today, so we should be able to
So
update
we
these
should put a real
numbers.
number in.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to have better
And
numbers.
which is why you're recommending this on this line and not on the capital fund. Correct, because you are feeling confident.
Rather than a special capital.
Oh, yeah,
The
that
special
I,
capital fund is stuff we don't know.
yeah,
We will
I,
most likely spend, we don't know.
I'm confident that we will spend this money, in the next few fiscal years, and this is based off of a legitimate plan that can be tweaked based on how things have changed over the last 5 years.
I have one clarification, Dewberry, and this is thanks to Chair Vaswani, that it's not really a master plan, right? They're doing an evaluation. What does that mean from a planning? How are you thinking about that? Just educate us and get us caught up on that. So we will get the actual, they'll do an evaluation, they'll say this is good, this is bad. And then they'll say automatically that translates into this is the stuff you need to fix and this is how, when you should fix it, or that is a separate.
Yeah, in my conversations with them, what I had recommended, how they structured their evaluation was to essentially give us a tiered list of needing immediate attention, recommendations that we would need to budget in a 3 to 5 year window, and then long-term budgeting. So their evaluation is telling us what we should do in terms of long-term planning for the streets.
Got it.
And sidewalks and curbs and gutters are to be clear too.
So in reality, this is the most expensive line for 5 year.
That's right. Yep. Yep.
Across 5 years.
Yes. Yep.
And is the concrete work is part of that?
The concrete work is, so going down to line 8 in concrete, this one, I will admit that this is just a rough number, and this is not in reference to any concrete plan. So it's kind of a placeholder number, to be honest, for now, although
Is this
based,
sidewalks?
this is concrete, so this is sidewalks, curbs and gutters.
But
Yeah.
we've done sidewalk fixes in the past. You have historic data on that.
Yes.
But that was like one of the amounts of the budget from when we were looking at that reconciling of it, that we really hadn't spent any money on sidewalk repairs. And so we said we probably need to go ahead and start booking some of these repairs, because it was like more like we were gathering the data
Got it.
and then gonna do it all at once, but really we need to make more like ad hoc sidewalk repairs, because we do have money that we have not spent in our current year. budget.
Yeah,
You're
great,
saying
great.
you're comfortable with this 50K estimate. Forward, keep it.
Oh, I was just talking,
Historically, what we've done.
yes.
I
mean,
was just,
think-
I brought that up because to anchor it in our projection, for our projections. forward. But since we've not done a lot of it. probably-
Right, so-
Yeah, I don't
This
know,
is-
because we haven't really done anything. I don't think
Right.
we've really repaired very many sidewalks, have we?
No,
Just that when I
most of
worked
the
there?
repairs that we've done over the last 7 or 8 years have been the grinding
Yeah.
of areas. So we haven't done a lot of actual sidewalk replacement.
And I'm sure that's well within the 50K.
Hasn't been any patching places.
Here and there, but primarily we've more focused on where there's the tripping hazards and grinding.
Like
those
where the
down.
roots have come up, kind of.
Maybe you should do some investigating for slightly more. Because you may end up overhauling somewhere. and That would be a problem.
That,
Well,
Yeah.
I would say this is a conservative estimate.
yeah,
I mean, there might be like 1 year in here when we really start to tackle the backlog. But I'd be surprised if we actually spend 50K every year.
Got it. So you're saying that it might be higher for next year and not that much moving forward. given that makes sense.
I think the wild card will be when we're replacing the streets, if we do the curbs and gutters. I think in terms of sidewalk, I think I would tend to agree with Steve that I think, especially keeping it consistent year over year, I don't know that we'll spend that much every single year for
We're
sidewalks.
keeping it for those
That's a good
regular.
point about connection with the road work. But this includes the curbs.
Right,
Matt, do you want to say a word about one of the committee requests on the diversity, equity, and inclusion
yeah,
request, just because you're going to wrap it into this planning?
yeah, exactly. So one of the requests from the diversity or equity inclusion committee, they had recommended an accessibility study for this year. And so one of the things I've talked about with Dewberry is making sure that when we're doing the evaluation of the sidewalks, that they're mindful of that when we do the repairs, we are bringing every intersection into ADA compliance.
Awesome.
So I think wrapping that into what we're already, as opposed to separating it out when it really should be done as part of it,
And
makes
Dewberry,
sense.
We didn't ask them that. They are in this position.
Yeah,
You
because
don't need specialized,
no, because
because they've done it for DC. They did all
exactly.
of that.
And actually, when you do a repair, you're required by law to
Law
bring
to
it
do
into ADA
There
compliance.
you go. Well done, Law.
So.
So another issue I wanted to bring up that's historic that we haven't talked about in a number of years is about 10 years ago, when Larry Plummer was our code enforcement officer, he identified the fact that there were dozens and dozens of driveway aprons in the town that do not comply with the code. And unfortunately, all those citizens could be cited because there's a lot of violations. And at the time, we didn't want to tackle it. But and for some reason in our code, it's the responsibility of the homeowner. In other municipalities, it's the responsibility of the town. But so one thing you might want to think about is whether you want to put in any money to give people discounts on driveway aprons.
Just to be
Would you explain what?
With the driveway apron.
I
is
know,
the-
I know, it's apron is,
You know
but
what it
how do you
is.
how do you get out of compliance on the apron?
Because it's in disrepair. It's like, haven't you noticed when you're walking that some of them are all broken up and that's a violation because it's a safety hazard. So-
What would be useful, I don't think everyone knows that. I don't
No,
know.
I don't
Talking about driveway.
It would be good to let
Yeah.
the town know that
Well, yeah,
this
now-
is a violation.
I-
please
well, there was,
fix
well,
it.
there was a lot of discussion about this because, there's the whole thing about whether you really want your town to be overly enforcing things and does it really, so we kind of faded away, but I just wanted to bring it up because if we're gonna have companies, one thing that did happen was that when the company was here to replace the streets, because they were here and had their equipment here, they offered residents the opportunity to very cheaply replace their apron. And I think I might have done that at that
Oh,
time.
interesting.
So this is something that needs to be explored and.
How
you
do we
can-
explore that? What do we do?
I think you have to go house to house.
Well, probably, there's some document here that Larry did that, I know there was a document that identified which were not in compliance, but of course, we don't really have a full-time code enforcement officer right now. If we did, we
But
could
we
have.
are gonna be getting
Right, I know,
someone to
Right.
help them
but,
in this area.
So
right,
that's another thing could you look into that?
but,
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is
Yeah.
I could talk to Dewberry about when they're looking at the streets, also evaluating the aprons. Because as the mayor said, I mean, what you don't want to happen is you redo the streets and then you have an apron that has cracks in it and then water gets in, seeps under
Right.
and it
Right.
significantly impacts the
It-
lifespan of. the
that's a
repairs that we just
problem.
did.
And also, one of the big missions of Larry Plummer was the streetscape. And that goes to our property value, it's so important for our quality of life and our property values and streetscape and all this other stuff. So I just brought it up because it's an issue, the council of, it must have been like 10 years ago. When we brought it up, they just didn't want to deal with it.
First of all,
But
I
maybe
don't
you
think the
do,
town
and so
knows
I'm
this.
letting you know, huh?
First of all, I don't
Yeah.
think everyone knows that if it's broken, it is a code violation. That would be useful for the town. Secondly,
Right.
I think if we can find ways to fix it, then let's pursue that. I mean, is the Dewberry option require us to change our budget? The idea is-
Well, but remember, it's the law right now, this is a private thing. We're not,
But
this
you're
isn't a
just like
town
getting information,
responsibility.
Trying to better understand the
But,
situation.
right, I understand, yeah.
I don't know to answer your question. I'll have to talk to them.
Until the next.
Yeah.
All right.
But it sounds like you would be offering town residents a discount in effect by
right.
basically saying your apron is not in compliance, but we have people coming in to do road work
Yeah, I
and
think that's
and they
great.
can add this into the project, but you have to pay because it's your apron.
In essence, what it does, every time you pay for that kind of work, you pay for them, as the mayor
Mobilization.
said, a mobilization fee. So
Yeah.
you're getting that removed.
So
Yeah, we should do
this
that.
is a good time, and I
Appreciate
wanted
the
to bring it
details.
up.
I know.
So you are aware, but it was it was one of those things that whatever was going on, whatever the big issues were, the council didn't want to pile that on to
All right, next.
to the
next
residents.
Line item.
but I wanted to pile it on you.
Yeah,
This
cheers.
time.
Thank you.
So we discussed the pool repairs, resurfacing, we kind of touched on streetlights. I have to go back and finesse those numbers, so I'll update those for our next meeting. And the next big item would be the stormwater infrastructure. And so here, basically continuing our 5-year plan, what this is doing is based off of the bid that we already have to carry out what we're expecting to be done at the identified mini watershed, and then to do a second iteration of that. So the plan again next year, and then the following year, the implementation of that plan. And in talking to Bayland, they said they would estimate the total cost of the stormwater work to be about $150 for that mini watershed. $150,000, yes, sorry. We should be so lucky, right? $150,000, and so for the purposes of budgeting at this time, because it's shared public-private infrastructure, on private land, I assumed the town contribute 50% and the residents are contributing 50% of the total
Which is
implementation.
extremely generous.
Yes, but I hadn't realized we were expecting the private
I think we
residents
need
to
discuss
pay
that.
anything.
Yeah, that was the assumption that I put in there, and it's up to the council
Let me
to.
explain the problem with that, which is that the mini watersheds have pumps that are high and low. That's the nature, and the water flows from high to low. The homeowners high on the hill do not have water problems at all. Because their water is running off their yard into the lower property. Asking them to pay 50% when they don't have a problem is a hard thing to do. That's the challenge. And that's why it's better that the town pays, because then nobody is incurring expenses for things that will not actually damage them.
Yeah, my assumption, and it was just an assumption, was that the towns would fully cover the costs of these installations, even though they're on private land.
We never discussed it.
But we never discussed it. It was
My
just my
assumption
thought.
has been, and I frankly felt generous, it would be covered 50%.
What did you think of the argument?
I think that, I don't know the data from this. I don't have any information other than our license. You know, so I don't know how to think through it. When you were talking about, I was thinking of the Orsets house. I've been there in the backyard. That's on top of the hill on Orset, and they have water flow. So I was thinking, over the hill, they water flow.
There were some.
Are they at the bottom of the hill from someone else?
There were some that-
I don't know.
I don't know,
just-
for the greater good, I think we need to pay for it.
For the whole thing?
Yeah, we do.
And
We have a
then
problem.
maintain it with each new home?
I don't know about the maintenance.
What
but
is
we
the
were-
maintenance?
How do
No.
we maintain it?
For budgeting purposes, what is the universe of this that we should assume for the 5-year plan? If the town is gonna cover all the water problems on private land, I'm just curious for our budgeting purposes.
We did put in a 5-year plan for it last year, which was probably an overestimate of the costs. And that was in the for the 5-year projection. But I think what's needed actually is a committee to recommend each one as we go. Because then we have more detailed budget recommendations from the committee. The stormwater committee has expanded. I think we probably should ask the environment committee their recommendations for the future one, and have some of these stormwater committee ad hoc on the environment committee help with recommendations. So we get.
You know, I don't know what the process is, but I feel this is going to be very, very, very tricky. Because we are paying. So I
Well,
don't
that's
think
all
we can-
true, but
We
that you
cannot
don't have to
delegate
decide.
to a
You don't-
committee.
But
is
you
what
know,
I'm
that's
saying.
all gonna be true, and you're eventually gonna have to
I
decide
think we
that
have to
answer.
be involved.
But in
No, I
terms of,
mean-
but in terms of the chair's question, all you need to know now is what number you want to put in, not how you're gonna use it.
So, great question. I think these numbers are fine for now, and we just may discover when we actually get to execution that the amount we can accomplish will depend on how much contribution we do or don't get from residents. This might be what the town would spend.
Steve, do you feel like, should we put this then? My view has always been, if we don't have a clear science, we put it in the special capital. fund. Develop a clear science, we vote and we move it into the line. For anything, you know, if we don't have a clear sense, that would be my recommendation. We move it, and that's what I made last year as well.
I think we have a pretty good sense of what we want to do. We're going through a multi-step process.
Okay.
You know, the study. It's just, there is this one open question of the cost share, we might say, but
We had assumed last year that the town was paying for it all. But the numbers last year, I put the first year high, thinking we wanted to start with a big project. In the end, we decided not to start with a big project, so the high number in the first year was appropriate, 150,000. some of the projects in future years will be more expensive.
I would just, I guess one thing to think about is, LIDC identified what, 26 mini watersheds, so.
39.
But the word, I mean, the word is much smaller than the problem.
But assuming if this is a mid-sized one, 150,000 times 39, we would be looking at.
No, it's not 39, it's what I'm saying. I mean, it may be 5 or 7, it's a number like that, spread over years.
I will say, from the budget committee's perspective, we've always wanted to understand the universe of costs before budgeting, because once you put these in, you've set a precedent and you're on that path.
That is,
So that's all I would say, is that if it's 5, if it's 7 of these projects, do that math, put that money aside, because that's the path you're setting. And that would be the budget committee's recommendation in terms of master planning, understanding the universe before you start spending money.
What do we do for this, for the forthcoming? You want to keep this? See recommendation, everyone?
Well,
Yes.
I mean, what they can
I'd like
say
to-
as it is just now, but we need to have a discussion about whether the town's. I mean, or
Let's do
everything
that.
or only some.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
I guess. And this would probably be a good topic for us to dig into more in some of the upcoming work sessions, because we should at least, if we can't completely resolve it, we should at least have a
Use
path
it.
to a resolution.
I think that was already planned to be discussed in the work session when you voted on the contract.
My concern with the contribution is, what if you need, I don't know, 5 homes to contribute to a solution, and only 4 of the homeowners are willing to contribute? We can't do, I mean, we don't have power of eminent domain, we can't force a homeowner to contribute.
That's why this is a very experimental
Yeah.
approach. Lots of pitfalls, to be really honest. I mean, like earlier, I asked, how do we maintain this? We will spend, and we have to come up with a maintenance estimate on top of the 39 multiplied by 150, at the high end. So that's.
But that's not
It's getting
factored
really
in.
high.
Maintaining isn't factored in because it's maintained by on the private property.
But it mean not.
But what,
And we've
what-
just
but what
spent
happens
money
if the
donating.
homeowner doesn't maintain it is the question. That's a good question.
Well, that is.
Then what we just did all this and it's moved, I just think that's a tricky, I'm not against, I'm just highlighting that it's tricky. It's a difficult approach, it's an experimental, innovative approach that requires a lot of thought and process.
I agree that it is experimental, and that we have to think it through carefully every step of the way. And all of that we do. One of the ways that we can help is the committee that we're putting together, actually. Well, just kidding, it's terrible. It is the owners committee for this mini watershed. One of the things we can ask them to talk about is maintenance, the extent to which they feel that they can be responsible for the maintenance. I don't know.
I think we should put this in a working session because we may need to have public hearings, frankly. We will need to have a lot of process here.
But
bring in
I
those
don't even
people.
think
Yeah.
though, like, from my standpoint, I don't even understand like what we would be installing yet. Because we don't really know that until the Bay people kind of come in and look at it. So, I think that once we have their information of like what it is, then we're gonna start to understand like, how does it benefit the town? Does it benefit the town as a whole, or is it only gonna benefit those couple of households? And what's the maintenance on it? And, all of those things, because, we do have to plan for a future where there is more rain in our town, in general. And so this rain has to go somewhere. And so, if we are setting up things now that help funnel this rain out in a better, more succinct way, that's only gonna benefit all of us, as we're getting these 1,000-year storms and everything. But I don't think we really know until we know what their plan is gonna be.
Yeah. That's fair.
To implement.
So what should we do then? Fiscal year 24, what's-
I vote to leave it at 100,000.
Yeah, I guess I'd just leave it as is.
Okay.
But this, I think this discussion indicates there are a number of issues for us to grapple with in this area.
Yeah. I guess when the BON study is done, which is, we are right now in the process of actually getting that launched. We have certain conditions that have to be met before it's once that's executed, it's launched, then we get the data. then we have another set of discussion.
And maybe he'll have better, different ideas, too, in
I agree.
general,
I
like,
think that would be awesome.
yeah, me
Right.
too. I mean, I think that they've done a lot of successful stuff in other areas.
I agree, I agree.
Okay. Great discussion. Keep rolling.
So those were the big.
Tho-
CapEx.
those are the major ones. So they get progressively smaller as we move down, so can maybe sort of,
Yes, question
Well,
with the truck.
Actually,
Yeah.
on the next one.
Yeah.
the Electric truck.
Yep.
Can I suggest? You think of leasing and get estimates for leasing rather than buying.
we had talked about that in previous years, and actually I did go and visit them, and what they essentially said is that they wouldn't lease to a company that, because of the nature of how we would use the truck, it wouldn't retain its value for them to lease it to us.
Is our truck dying? We need a new
Yes.
Truck?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And in fact,
Wasn't it budgeted last year?
in fact, what
We
What-
did approve it.
what
last
I might recommend is we move it into this budget because there's such a delay in the
Getting-
electric trucks, so that if for some reason something comes available in the next couple of months, we can go there, get the truck that we need and start using it.
Gotcha.
And it doesn't affect our bottom line over the course of years. It would just be spending it 3 months earlier, but
year. I'm looking at the time. Does it count to- We had budgeted 7:30.
Right,
Okay,
7:30, so it's probably a good time to go into operational.
that's what
Are
I'm
we
wondering.
taking the books home? Just now, we need
Or
to-
should
Yours.
I think we can-
Sure.
It's yours.
yeah, you can take that home. Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Actually, maybe we can stop at the summary.
It's not
tab.
secret.
You have that summary?
No, the over, this one,
Overall sum.
just to like
Sure.
remind everyone.
Okay.
I need to.
So now, I'm in tab 1. We're gonna go over,
We did revenues.
we talked about revenue.
We did CapEx.
We've talked about the major capital expenditures. And so now we're moving into our operational budget,
Which is where?
which is, I think the best place to start would be in tab 8, which is also one of the bigger pages here, because if you go over to number 6 first, you'll see that
Personnel is the biggest.
personnel is our biggest cost.
Personnel and
Especially when you
professional.
consider personnel with our de facto staff of our professional services. So in the personnel plan, the big thing to highlight is,
Can you zoom in on?
yes.
Definitely overpaying our name.
No bonus for him, no bonus for
You know,
him.
that figure has never been, that hasn't been changed for like 20 years. So you're
It was like
under-
20 years ago.
you're underpaying.
But like 20 years ago, it was about $8,000,
You're
by the way.
No, it's 15. It's been
I
15,
think so.
yes.
Okay.
It's been
So inflation
15
applied to that.
for at least 20 years.
I'm only joking.
Yeah.
You're a bargain.
You're a
Yeah,
bargain.
I
You're a
know
bargain.
that. I know that. Most people think it's 15,000.
I think.
Most
we
people
are
say
a
it should be
bargain.
15,000 a week.
You're a steal.
How much do we get paid?
And we are the bargain here.
Well, that's something that I've always said should be included as some kind of stipend for council.
Definitely for the budget committee chair.
How about,
Seriously, I'm not, you guys are laughing, but that is serious
we haven't
work.
got a lot of time left, so how about deputy town manager? How are you all approaching that?
I'm meeting with somebody on Wednesday, actually, about this position, that I feel good about. I don't want to say too much about it in case I jinx it, but
Can you do the walkthrough?
yeah. So the number one thing I would say is what we've done historically is tied our staff to the inflationary increases. So that could also be something to evaluate if we, I sort of benchmarked against other towns, and what they typically do is more around a 2.5.
Cost of living. Normally it's a cost of living.
Well, that's what the federal government does. So it's, there's multiple ways to do it. So I just
You're
wanted,
saying we've been doing inflation.
we've tied it to
Which
the
is higher,
same
which is higher,
inflation.
bottom
Yeah.
line, it's
Yes.
higher than cost of living.
Right, yes,
Because
that's,
cost of living actually is underborrowing, it often underborrows.
Yeah.
The real
Right.
impact.
some of our other towns will do a flat percentage or do cost of living, but then budget for annual bonuses instead of,
I think let's not rock the boat on.
So-
Yeah.
just giving that as background information. I think that the main thing to highlight, as Robin said, just getting a third person in the office. And at first, we were talking about a code enforcement person, public safety, trying to mold it into that, which I think we definitely see a gap in our service there. But given how small we are, given that Linda and I we have our hands in so many pots that it makes sense to just bring in another generalist person that has background that can, they can pivot from one project to another. I think there's benefit to, as opposed to the contracted staff, to be able to have staff in-house that's working on it, to be able to assign them specific tasks and hold them accountable the same way you can a staff member instead of a contractor. They get to know the town specifically better. So I've been kind of conservative in the number. I don't know if that's where I started. The flip side of what it enables us to do is take some of the load off of the building administrator. We're about to spend $100,000. We're on pace to spend $100,000 on a building administrator this year.
Is that Doug?
Yeah, which is just, it's a lot. And it's unnecessary, and he's doing work beyond what he was
His
originally.
job, that's
beyond-
that you will roll into this.
Exactly, yeah, we're paying him to do we're paying him a technical rate to do non-technical work. And so this number brings us back to FY18.
Which number, sorry?
I'm sorry, so if we're looking at line 12,
The building
in
administrator.
the building administrator line, I put that in green to highlight, we're moving in the right direction there. This is going back to FY19, which was the last year that we had more consistent code enforcement, going based off of that number and bringing it in line with his rate now versus back then, essentially. The other big thing I think we should highlight and keep an eye on is the stormwater administrator and stormwater review.
Could we stop?
Yes, of course, yeah.
That's a different line.
That's a different thing, yeah.
Could we get reactions to what you said about deputy town manager?
Sure.
the
Yep.
administrator,
Yep.
From everyone, because those are chunky.
Well, so isn't the stormwater administrator, I mean, who would that be? Doug also?
Right now, we have an interim contract with Baylands to do.
Right, the study.
To not just the the study, but separately as well. They're doing plan evaluations. So when we get a new
Oh,
application
that's
in,
great.
they're going to review the plans. It costs $1,250 per plan. And they said for a new construction project, they have to do 2 passes of it at least.
Yeah,
So this is assuming 3 reviews a month, basically, and using the number that we're paying them a month to do 3.
and they're, and,
Oh,
but isn't that what, but isn't that
Well-
kind of what Doug was, I mean, isn't that, he's a civil engineer?
I think what we found in our, maybe, we're gonna pay for it either way. So it's, we could wrap it into building administrator. Either Doug's gonna do a review and he's gonna charge us for his time to do the stormwater review
Right,
in
okay.
addition. But my thinking on this was based off of the building permits that we've had since the code's been updated, that we would benefit from
Yes.
specific stormwater expertise and review.
They're
Yeah.
specialists in stormwater.
No, and they're not tied to Montgomery County, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. So what this does is use the numbers that we would pay them, and I don't have a great sense of whether or not I mean, the reason I did 3 is because I figured that would be every other month if we have
Application.
an application, thank you. And then one other application a month, 150 square feet is a small threshold. So I think just for budgeting purposes, it makes sense to do, at least one more month.
Feels like a lot of work for council, but.
It does, yeah, I agree, but that's, part of the reason why I thought it made sense to do this as an interim agreement with them is we'll go through it for 3-4 months and we'll decide if we need to move on and do it in a different way from there.
So those two, the deputy town manager and the stormwater administrator are new staff.
Those are new staff and the kind of core,
It's not new, but you're estimating less.
the
because these guys-
corresponding moves downward are at the building administrator line and the code enforcement line. So that's zeroed out starting next year. And if you see, we are spending more, although I would point us to, just to make you jump around.
Don't make it.
Okay. Well,
Just kidding.
it's the tab right before that. I would just point out that when we're looking at the percentage of our total budget year over year, the percentage that we would be spending on personnel and professional services is staying pretty steady, which I think is pretty good considering we added a big administrative addition to our town, but with the stormwater.
So you're saying it's increasing roughly by 78K, but from a share of total budget perspective, it's roughly holding.
We're getting more bang for, we're spending more, but we're getting more bang for our buck.
Can I ask a question about the accounting assistants?
Yeah,
Is that an accountant or is that a bookkeeper at $200 an hour?
that's the accountants that are doing the reconciliations for us and our audit prep with
Because
us.
those are accountants. that are
Yes,
spending
yes.
$200 an hour. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Remember that guy we did the budget reconcile?
What's our total headcount?
But this isn't.
Sorry?
Account.
What's our
This is
total
separate
headcount?
from the town accountant.
For,
An auditor.
I said for full-time equivalency, we're gonna be at 5.5 employees
Across all of it.
across
I don't know if
everything.
everyone heard that.
Yeah, so this would get us full-time equivalency about 5.5 employees if we were only hiring staff.
So that's, I think it's good, given everything we do.
Well, let me give you some historical perspective. We've been understaffed for at least 5 years,
Previous council.
and I don't want to call it any names, but anyway,
Was the previous council again?
I don't want to call it any names. We're all good friends here. But we,
Well, that's what we want to do. I think the important thing is we want the town management to provide more service
Yeah.
to the residents.
our
Okay, so-
citizens have a very high expectation for service.
And our committees
And I
also
can-
have high expectations.
Right,
Um,
right, and the committees need to be staffed
Right.
and,
Right.
I'm the one who I'm the one who fields the complaints on that line. People are afraid to, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, because I do think there's a lot of clearly, undoubtedly. We've all first had experience. It's a lot.
And with Linda.
And with Linda, exactly, sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, so
I mean,
that's a lot.
we are so lucky with the employees that we have in including our maintenance staff.
But there are two things. One is we need you to guarantee that you will prioritize hiring.
Yeah.
Because it's typical, always happens. It's easy to just deal with it, then to get the people, train them, but you must make that investment if we're going to go ahead with this. Because every year we do think about personnel, but we then don't have.
Right.
we have to act.
Yep.
And we need your guarantee on that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say, the deputy town manager, I like that it's clever title, because I think you would get a high caliber person than if you just ended up with code enforcement,
Right.
right? And you'll get someone who maybe wants a career in local government. And, I think you might be able to train that person.
Right. It's one of them.
Yeah,
Well, the other towns in the area have that.
they have that. Okay, that's
Well,
good.
Friendship
So that's good
Heights,
because
right?
there's a
Friendship
village.
Heights just hired
Doesn't
one,
the
the village
Well,
has
because he
one.
died, because he died, Rob died. So they always had one. I
Oh,
don't think the
yeah.
town, I don't know about the town, they need one.
They do, they just hired.
So they have
someone
one
as
as well,
well.
yeah.
Do you have a job description already?
Yes, yeah, I do.
Workman's compensation. Is this workman's compensation insurance, or are we paying out $20,000?
No, I'm
That's-
sorry, it's the insurance, it's
Okay,
part of
that's
what we
fine.
pay with Montgomery
That's what I
County.
was, I
Yep.
was hoping the answer was.
No, we don't, that's why you have insurance, we don't have to pay.
Okay, well, I'm just hoping that we don't, I mean, we have a small staff.
Yeah,
It's
I
all
was
required
worried
by
that-
law.
I mean, whoops,
It's-
okay.
And by the way, everybody, if you have domestic employees in your house, you should have workers' comp insurance. Right, Ann?
the other comment, you asked
Okay,
a broader
taxes,
question
taxes, Social
in this
Security.
area, Kabir, about what do we think about the town manager, deputy town manager, some of these changes. I'm very much in favor of adding a full-time deputy town manager. I think that as we talked about some of the duties and expectations that are on your shoulder and with Linda's support, it's a lot. You really need another person in the town hall on a regular basis. I know, just as a, for example, with the public safety committee, they have tons of questions that they are good questions. They need to be answered.
Yes.
It takes time to reach out to the other communities to
Takes
find out
time
what
to
they're
read
doing.
those
all
memos.
this.
Totally.
Takes time to read.
Takes everybody.
So I fully support the deputy town manager. I would like to explore how we can effectively use that deputy town manager to minimize building administrator and stormwater administrator services. I just think that I don't think we need to visit the work sites every day.
Mhm.
And we're paying a lot for that. I think our deputy town manager can visit sites, and that's better for the town, because then we have somebody who's in the town hall every day, and people will recognize this individual. If they have follow-up questions, they can easily get in touch with that individual. They can ask the individual to come back to their house, take a look at something. It all works well.
Agreed.
Okay. Just my thoughts. So,
I agree, and the only thing I would say, I don't want to belabor the point, because I think we're all in agreement. But yeah, I think long-term, the idea would be, we're getting technical advice and reports from these technical experts, but then we're able to in-house do the monitoring of the town and take care of the day-to-day stuff.
I have a suggestion. I don't know if folks want to consider this now, the police role. Perhaps instead of listing it as police, we put it as like police - security. Because I'm not sure that.
Sounds good.
Why don't you put it as public safety?
Public safety.
Public
That's
safety,
the
like
word.
that better.
That's a good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Thank
even use
Okay,
security.
sound like for sure. Okay, that's all I have. And it's not even 7:30.
Wait,
What
have this, Debbie?
I'm good. No, I asked I think I asked my questions.
Okay, so those were the big items, revenue, CapEx, and personnel, which is bulk of the budget.
Yeah, the other operational expenses are more set in stone. It's the, what it costs to maintain the pool, our trash contracts.
Snow removal.
Snow removal, which is always. Maybe it's something
It's
to
never gonna be
evaluate,
done.
but we always want to keep the money in there in case it happens.
Do we pay as we go with snow removal?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
good deal.
yeah. So this year, I mean, knock on wood, but I mean, we.
Climate change, baby.
yeah.
One
Budget
issue,
windfall.
one issue you definitely, I hope you will deal with this year is the batting cage.
What's wrong with the bag?
We did that last year.
He's
like, we just gotta hold it there.
every
You're right, can that-
long overdue
No one's
topic.
using it.
We fixed, that's
Oh,
not true.
No one's
Don't
using
get-
it.
people are using it.
How many times has the key been requested?
I see people. doing
Deputy
that.
town manager will handle that
How many?
very effectively.
But I think the issue is the sign as you welcome into Somerset on Dorset. That is like for this year, right?
Yes.
I want to advocate for that cage. I'm on record as that I have advocated for
Could
that.
I just get your attention for one moment?
Yeah.
It just, while we've got a couple minutes.
Sure.
I want to get some of your reactions to the idea of including increases in fees, including increases in property tax and develop or worksheets. In other words, we're seeing quite substantial inflation. Are we supposed to keep the fees flat, or should we increase our fees to reflect the inflation in the rest of the world? And having a recommendation from budget committee, that way
That would be from the
It
revenue.
would be the revenue committees.
And, well, I think,
It's
I'm
my
glad-
fault.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do think that well, I don't know that the revenue committee wanted to deal with that kind of issue, because I wanted them to deal originally with
But that's
with
the
property,
committee, the
all
budget
these
committee
taxes.
cannot do that.
But in any case, so I'm glad Councilmember Barr brought that up, because the fees should be circulated so that people look at them. And then the staff does need to do a comparison again to what other towns around here are charging for this.
Jeffrey and Robin, does it make sense to make our second meeting, could we make that a topic of our second budget?
Well, we have another meeting scheduled. Isn't that one of
Next
the
Monday,
things?
right?
Next Monday,
Isn't that one of the things that you would talk about?
we could talk about
Does
that.
that include like pool fee, pool like guest fees?
We had budget.
No.
No,
Well,
no,
you
no,
can-
I know
you
that.
can.
All fees, tennis fees.
But
No,
okay,
we're talking
no,
about
no.
fees.
You can.
All the
So
services
I think
fees,
we're
like-
assuming that everything's growing by the rate of inflation, all these expenses.
Oh,
correct,
so
Matt?
20, so like.
So-
But the fees are not.
Except
The
we
fees
are
are
waiving
set.
some fees.
The fees have to be set, have to be changed. for the
Fees, Ann is correct that in our budget, we do assume it's tied to the inflation. So as they stay flat, it doesn't
But
necessarily.
we're not charging that.
Exactly.
So
We're not-
So
so
we're not
the
collecting
second
them.
step
We're not
is
charging them.
it's already in the budget, the council.
And it's like,
has
I've done
the-
my job,
has the
man.
opportunity to say,
That's all.
yes, fees should increase with the rate of inflation.
Well, then that's a big, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a big
But-
deal.
Good.
Well, that's something that every year the council is supposed to look at.
So we
Yeah.
should spend some time next week on that.
Okay, so for that, I
Or do
can,
we have to work it out first in a work session to talk
Yeah.
about how we want, no?
This is a work session.
Okay.
We are.
I'm good.
We have.
I'll-
I'm good.
I'll bring information, I guess,
Oh,
on
yeah.
our neighboring towns to benchmark based off of them, our current fees.
But let me point out, let me point out that some of the fees are connected to committees.
Town hall.
Some of the fees are connected to committees, so you wouldn't want to, well, first of all, the fees aren't in the budget, the fees themselves are not in the budget, it's a separate action. So in the past, sometimes when the council has budgeted more revenue for a certain fee, then when they voted on the budget, they also voted to increase that fee so that the revenue would be achieved that year. But there are certain fees, it's good that you're talking about it, so you can put it out there. But if you're going to consider raising the tennis fee, for example, which is ridiculously low. What is it, like $25?
On that, I have to tell you that I found the flyer for when we bought our house in 1995, and they showed the tennis courts in it and pool, they showed tennis court fee at that time of $25.
Right, it's the same.
A lot
No,
higher.
but tennis-
But if you're going to raise a fee like that, you definitely need to engage the tennis committee.
Okay, I have
They
a
are in
question.
favor.
I have a question.
Mhm.
I
To the
actually don't agree with
2,500.
that. I think fees have to be, don't belong in the committees. Committees are very emotional. Cause you bring that up with the tennis committee, it'll be emotional.
Well,
You
it's
bring up
part
the
of their
pool,
mission.
It's emotional.
But-
It's our job to govern.
I
And
definitely.
to
They
take
make a
care of
recommend, they don't set the fee, they make a recommendation.
Yeah, I know they make a recommendation,
But
but
that's
We
part of
stick
the
to the
mission.
recommendation.
That's part of the mission of the committee.
I don't know that it should be. I
Well,
think it's something to talk
Well,
about.
it is, so you
We are in
can
charge
change
of the
that now.
financial health of the town.
I
I know,
agree
that's
with you,
right.
Debbie, but just to clarify on process for next time. we've covered revenue, we've covered CapEx, we've covered OpEx. I think next time,
It should be per person.
hold on, Jeffrey, hold on. There are two things that we can focus on next. One is if you have the materials now, you are acclimated with the budget. If there are any specific questions, we can focus on those next time. That's number one. Number two, Matt has some homework and clarifications. So we'll go through that and clarify that. Number three, Robin has suggested we look through our fees, and I think Anne made the observation that actually we budget an increase, but we don't implement the increase. So we need to reconcile that because we can't budget the increase and wish it away. So we need to reconcile that and be very clear what that looks like.
But our fees are, I mean, we get really not very much money.
But remember,
Fees, right?
the
No, but
number,
we have a built-in inflation.
remember,
increases, but we don't
the
implement
number in the
Understood.
the number in the budget is based on how many fees would be collected. So,
Fair enough. We can topple that number.
so
You're right.
perhaps you're gonna decide that even if the fee for the tenants remains flat, that more people are gonna pay it this year.
Right.
And that's what that is.
And just to correct, I actually changed it because our fees haven't changed in a few years. I did just keep our projections even over a
Okay,
5-year budget.
okay.
Same with the
right
bank.
All right, that's good.
So
I
does
think
the
it depends
revenue
on that.
committee have a recommendation on fees? Because they
They
did
did
work on
have-
this for,
They
okay.
did have, but then they didn't come back together and send us the
Okay.
official
We have to say,
recommendation,
we
and
have-
now they're not gonna do it for
we
next.
have-
Can I just recommend that everybody go through their line
Yeah.
items, so they don't-
Yes.
and with
So
their
we have to
questions, and then we just
So
tackle
you come ready
questions?
with the question.
Yeah, yeah.
Homework, that's
Homework.
homework.
Yeah.
Speaking of homework, I have a whole committee meeting.
And
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Just
See you guys later.
one other thing I
How
was
about
gonna say is just a reminder that next week, we talked about budget, and then we said we would meet an extra 45 minutes for a regular work session to try to squeeze
Yeah.
things in. So
I
I
think
think
we can.
we're gonna order food so that we have dinner available, since it'll be
Oh,
a
excellent.
long evening.
Is that in the budget?
Is that in
Okay.
the budget?
Okay, so
Not in the
so-
budget, you can't ask
That's,
Great
that's
job.
coming out of your
Great
salary.
Great job,
Mayor.
great job.
Thank you, Ann. His overpayment.
Guys,
Great
please
job.
thank Anne.
Yes.
So.
Yeah,
Leon,
you
do you-
make the whole committee.
Yeah.
Beer
So
and
how
Matt,
about
great
Wednesday?
job. Great to
How
work
about
with.
Wednesday at,
Thanks, everybody joining.
Sorry.
Send me what you got.
I
Have a great
sent out the
evening.
vote
how about
date
Wednesday at
text
12?
now
What time on
and the,
Wednesday can you do it, Steve?